So, welcome to March Wine Club for Divine Vintage. And this month, we thought we'd do something a little bit different. As we transition from winter into spring, we thought we'd just challenge some preconceptions about what to drink. And usually, you think of springtime or colder times as having more hearty red wines. So, we wanted to show you that white wine is usually considered crisp and fresh and youthful and refreshing. But there's another side to it, and there's a power to them. So the theme for March is power whites. And we've chosen two white wines from iconic producers in France. And we wanted to show that wines are not all about fresh is best, but these wines can have a certain amount of what they call structure. So structure can come from things like oak, from alcohol, but they can also get some structure from aging. So we've chosen two wines from France. The first one that we've got is from Burgundy. And the second one is from the Rhone. Let me just spin those around. So the first one is from Burgundy, and it's from a producer based in Meursault. It's Michelot, Domaine Michelot. And the second one is just on the other side of Lyon, so to the south of the city of Lyon, in the northern Rhone Valley. And this is an area mostly known for red wines, but we've got a wine from 100% of a white grape called Marsanne. And these two wines are both from the 2022 vintage. Now, we wanted to show wines that had some age on them. If you think about something like Sancerre, Sauvignon Blancs, Chablis, often these wines are the best when they're relatively new. So, for example, we're in March 2026 at the moment, and what's on the market is a lot of wines from 2024. So if you're drinking a Sancerre, it's probably from 2024. With no oak, it's fresh, it's zippy, and it's a wine that's really best consumed in its youth to capture all the freshness and the vibrancy and the refreshment factor. You also have things like Chablis, which come from Burgundy, which is again unoaked, cool climate Chardonnay. But what we've done here is we've gone to the main part of Burgundy. So the main part of Burgundy is really centered around the town of Beaune. And to the north of Beaune, it's known as the Côte de Nuits. So from Beaune up to the town of Dijon, famous for mustard, the Côte de Nuits, based on the village of Nuits-Saint-Georges, is mostly about Pinot Noir. So some of the great wines from Burgundy are Pinot Noir made from the Côte de Nuits. The southern part from Beaune is known as the Côte de Beaune. And the Côte de Beaune is where you get the famous white wine villages. So things like Meursault, Poligny-Montrachet, Chassagne-Montrachet, these are villages in this Côte de Beaune area. Now, when you label a wine as Bourgogne, which is French for Burgundy, in essence, the grapes can come from anywhere in the whole Burgundy region. So they could come from Chablis, they could come from down south in Macon to get something a little bit richer. And often they blend these Chardonnay grapes together to make a representation of the region, which they call Bourgogne. But in 2017, they came up with this new appellation, and they called it Bourgogne Côte d'Or. So Côte d'Or translates as the golden slopes, gold and slopes, so Côte d'Or. So the golden slopes are really running from Dijon down to just south of Beaune, and it includes the Côte de Nuits and the Côte de Beaune. So this is more specialized. So what we're doing is we're zooming in to really the main region where they're going to grow these grapes without stretching it across the entirety of Burgundy. So Domaine Michelot is a very well-known producer of Meursault. So Meursault is one of the great white wines of the world, made from Chardonnay, but made from older vine Chardonnay. And there's a real richness or depth or concentration with it. So what's happened here is this Domaine Michelot Bourgogne Côte d'Or is actually pretty much just declassified Meursault. And Meursault is a wine that's capable of aging maybe 20 or 30 years. This Bourgogne Côte d'Or has a similar richness and concentration and power to it, but interestingly, it's only 12.3% alcohol. So that's pretty light in the world of white wine. So when people think power doesn't always come through from alcohol. Alcohol does provide power, but it's not the only thing. What gives this wine the power is the age of the vine. It's very old vines with very deep root systems, therefore producing a lot of concentration in the grapes. So when the grapes are concentrated, they end up as a powerful character in the wine. The best way to do that is through tasting. So if I grab this, you can even see it's got a little bit of color from it. It's a little bit of a golden hue coming through because it's taking on a little bit of age, a little bit of oxygen gets to it, and that starts to affect the color. But when you smell it, there's richness to it. There is power. So there's power to the fruit. So this wine's getting its power derived from its fruit. There's a little bit of oak in there, but it's oak done in a beautiful way where people talk about oaky and buttery and sort of all the things that they don't like about Chardonnay. But when you get it made by a top Burgundian producer who makes wines that can sell for several $100s a bottle, and they put the same care and attention into their entry-level offering, a little bit like February's Wine Club, where we looked at Aldo Contorno's Langhe Nebbiolo, Il Favot. You're really getting a taste of the best at a fraction of the price. So that just has a beautiful, rich, soft, deep, contemplative aroma to it. It's very long and satisfying. A great way to tell a good wine or a powerful wine is the length of flavor, how long the flavors stay in your mouth once you've swallowed. And for me, those flavors are still going. This is very long. So for its station, this is actually an excellent example. If this was a wine from California of this sort of quality, you'd be looking at probably over $100 a bottle, just for the quality of it and the ability for it to age. Now, there is some oak in there, but it's complementary rather than dominant. There is a slight creamy, but it's like a French butter rather than a big, rich buttery character. And I think that really is just it's a wonderful example of a powerful wine. It's strong enough to stand up to some quite powerful food. So being in Burgundy, one of the great dishes there is coq au vin. So coq au vin is chicken or rooster cooked with wine. And I think trying something like that on a cold winter's day, you don't have to have red wine when the temperature is below what you're used to doing for refreshing wines. So I think crisp white wines wouldn't necessarily work with more powerful food, but a powerful white can pretty much be a replacement for a red wine. So that's the first one. That's from Burgundy, from Chardonnay, with power, with only 12.3% alcohol. So there's concentration from other factors. When we go on to the next wine, now the next wine is pretty fascinating. This is a really top producer called M. Chapoutier. So the son, Michel Chapoutier, took over the family vineyards in 1990. And immediately what he went out to do, he set off to do, was go into organic viticulture and straight away into biodynamic viticulture. So he was one of the first proponents in France on a larger scale to employ biodynamic principles, which is organic farming, but then farming to the rhythms of the earth. So using the cosmos with the moon, the waxing moon, the waning moon, doing certain vineyard operations at certain times of day, getting a real balance into the vineyard. Now the Rhone Valley really stretches from the city of Lyon in the north down to sort of Avignon in the south. But within the Rhone, you've got quite distinct, you've got the northern Rhone and you've got the southern Rhone. So the northern Rhone is only about 5% of production of the whole Rhone Valley, while as the southern Rhone, famous for wines like Châteauneuf-du-Pape, really does a lot of the volume through wines like Côte du Rhône. So Côte du Rhône is a blend of usually red grapes from the south of France. And then if you look at the Northern Rhone is almost exclusively the red wines made from Syrah, the Syrah grape. So the grape wines of Hermitage, Gros Hermitage, Côte-Rôtie, Saint-Joseph, Cornas, these are all names of appellations in northern France or northern Rhone that use the Syrah grape. But there is a little bit of white running around. Probably the most famous white grape in the northern Rhone is the white grape Viognier. So Viognier used to only be in the northern Rhone and nowhere else in the world. It was almost extinct. It's famous for an appellation wine called Condrieu. So Condrieu is 100% of the Viognier grape. But there's a few other grapes around there too. One's called Roussanne, one's called Marsanne. You find these in the south as well. So you'll find these in a white Châteauneuf-du-Pape blend. But this particular wine is from the appellation of Gros Hermitage. So Gros Hermitage is quite a large appellation. A lot of people know it for the red wines made from Syrah, which are quite smoky, meaty, and mineral. But this is 100% of a grape called Marsanne. Now, Marsanne you don't really see on its own a lot. So what I'm going to do with this is another reason that powerful white wines are different to crisp white wines is the ability to decant these. So as I decant this, the whole idea really is I'm just trying to get some oxygen into the wine. You look at the color of that. I mean, that really is quite a golden color. And when you've got a powerful wine, now remember, this is only 12.5% alcohol, but when you've got a powerful wine like this, it's a wine that, like a red wine, when there's that much concentration, getting exposure to oxygen through decanting. So you think about it, you're pouring the wine through the air, and that wine is aerating as it's being poured. As it sits in the decanter, you'll notice that there's a larger surface area there. So all that surface area is in contact with the oxygen. That oxygen is getting into the wine, and the oxygen acts like a key. It sort of unlocks a lot of the flavors and the aromas that are in there. So what I'm going to do with this wine, let's just show you how this is different. This Marsanne grape. So pouring that, and that's a lovely, rich, golden, almost amber color. It's showing a little oxidation. But the big difference is when you smell it. And most wines we're used to are very they're fresh, they're fruity. It might have tropical fruit characters. It might have citrus fruit. And these are sort of typical of grapes like Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc and even Riesling. But when you try a Rhone grape like this, like Marsanne, rather than being fruity, it's more kind of flat. There's a broadness to it. There's almost a nutty character. Slightly honeyed as well, but honeyed not in a sweet way, but in that kind of that rich way. Now that really has quite a different character to the Chardonnay. This is really broad. It really stretches across your palate. There's a flatness to it rather than a lifted fruitiness. The acidity is kind of, it's moderate. It's not as high as the Chardonnay. But this wine's strong. So this is a wine that could really handle some grilled fish. It could go with some stronger cheeses. Actually, they could both be great with stronger cheese. But this is a wine that really is quite remarkable. You probably haven't tried anything like this before. There's a few examples in California you might get. You might get some Roussanne you might have seen around, perhaps some white Grenache, some Grenache Blanc. But this Marsanne on its own is not that common. And this opens up some wonderful food pairing possibilities. You could even have a steak with this. You could have pork chops. You could have something that's creamy, that's rich, something that's stewed and powerful. But this is a wine that takes the role almost of a red wine. So it's a white wine that can handle very, very strongly flavored foods and handle it quite well. One other quick fun fact about this, Michel Chapoutier was really the first wine producer. His brother is blind. So if you feel the front of the label, there's Braille on the label. So all the labels from Chapoutier have Braille on the labels. So you can go, oh yeah, it's M. Chapoutier, Le Messonnier, it's Creux-Hermitage, 2022. But that's a fun wine. So we just thought this month, we just wanted to turn normal preconceptions of what wines are on their head a little bit, show you some white wines that can go with some strong food, go in replacement of red wine, but also it's like the opposite of what we consider crisp, poolside, refreshing white wines. So these are wines to contemplate. They're not for refreshment so much, but they're really wines that have a place at within a table. It's probably not the wines that you drink all year long, but I think March was a great time to experiment with these. So welcome to March Wine Club. Enjoy discovering power whites and see what you think of these. Talk to you next month. Cheers.